the reason that I work within abstraction and within the language of abstract painting is that it's this place where there isn't a clear image of perspective. It's much more about that in-between place. And so I don't think any of these are about the drawing in complete opposition to the architecture. In fact, I think it's about the challenge of one to the other, but then this other form and other thing that can emerge within their kind of that duality in a way. And not even duality, they're intermingling, and they're kind of becoming something else. They're becoming fused together. There are certain elements of them that require a lot of control. Or the process of the skill of the drafting that happens with the architectural drawing. There's some very controlled moments in them, but I think that they're actually very, very, there's a lot of intuitive, very loose and investigative drawing that takes place in the painting. These marks couldn't exist with just rational thinking. I feel that all these elements of of the language that I work with participate in morphing into this other form to engage in this experience. And so this is a very different type of way of thinking about my work or talking about my work and even making the work than in the past. But that is an evolution because it couldn't exist without the work that I had made in the past. Well, there's this element in the work, in the way that I'm thinking, which is, for example, this painting is made in New York City, and this one behind me, and my thinking and the way that what I've been really reading and following and paying attention to is the situation in Cairo. Why am I, as a person living an artist living and making in New York City, so involved in this one situation? Why is that so important to me? Why is it? And that question is a big part of the making of this work. Like, what is that? And that comes from this being and having come from Ethiopia. My family left Ethiopia right after the revolution, moved to the United States. My entire perspective on this type of a situation and my interest in it has been very informed by this very important kind of shift in my life that happened. And so there's this type of spatial shift that has occurred, but there's also this connection, and in that there's this other type of psychological space and connection, and not connection, but the psychological space and geography and making sense of a place from a very different place. And there's something about that that crisscrosses across the ocean and goes back to the continent, even though I'm in this city trying to make sense of myself here as a person in this city and living here. Every piece exists, and they all come around and come into the world in different ways. And some of the pieces, if we talk about like the piece behind us, that's a much more evolved, complex process than some of the smaller paintings or some of the paintings in the front North Gallery that have a different type of beginning in a way, and then they evolve with a little more intuition and without so much of a conceptual kind of underpinning for it. And I'm very interested in these happening at the studio at the same time. These various types of processes of my thinking and making can occur simultaneously, and that they start to really inform each other very, very, very much. So the paintings, in the way that I used to really make them, I have this variety of types of language that I was really kind of immersed in, and I think that for example, like the painting behind us, I had this, there's part of this intuitive or knowledge that's underneath the surface that guides me in terms of making certain decisions. And then once I have maybe this, in this case, there was a format, a scale, a placement of the painting in the gallery. There's the history of the work that I had made beforehand that led into this, and then it brought up new questions. So I was involved in this research with the revolutionary squares, and I thought that this painting would have many different squares layered into it in terms of the architectural drawing. But we focused really in on one form of one city, and that's Cairo. Architectural space, I mean, I'm using it in a very particular type of rendering. The renderings from the photograph. And usually, you can really pick out very clear elements from the photographs that have been drawn a particular way. To me, and this is the case for most forms of creative kind of forms that have taken place, whether it's architecture, art history, or architectural history, music, there's a social element and political element that's unavoidably tied into that form. And architecture especially, because it's the built environment of it's our built environment that we have created over time with very many layers of social and political thought. And in here, they're really the opposite of physical form. You can see through everything, and it becomes atomized and becomes these little parts, and these little parts get fused with the marks, and they become something else. And so in a way, you feel like you have this memory of these spaces that we as urban dwellers all know. So the reason I'm interested in the scale, to work on this scale, is that you have this physical, you can only internalize so much of the image in one place. And from the position that you can internalize that and process that information and see that image, you can only have so much detail. And as you get closer and closer to the image and then start to become engaged in the painting up close, there are very many different images. And so you have these multitude experiences in a short amount of time. And then as you process the painting and participate with the image and start to really unravel the painting in a way, you have to travel through it, and physically something you just saw becomes almost like a memory in your experience of it. So it's very cinematic in that way. It has this, like, time-based experience that it takes, and or demand in a way. And so then when you step back, you have you have this other vision of this painting that is very, very different from the experience you have up close. So these two perspectives, or 3 different or 4 different, there's numbers of levels of reading that are very important to me, or feeling and reading and engaging. And then when you're back again, you see the whole image again, and the whole image has a very particular structure that has emerged, and then it completely breaks up with these smaller paintings and images and structures. And I think with certain types of film-based projects, you either participate or you choose not to, but if you choose not to, you know you haven't seen it. And because you have not seen it from the beginning to the end. And painting doesn't have that same type of, it requires a similar type of engagement in time, but it doesn't have this beginning and an end in a clear way. That it's hard to know when that process you've actually achieved that at full circle, but they require time, and all painting requires time to really experience.